Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Talk of the Towns, the podcast that talks all things towns. And so we have a great guest with us here today. But before we get to him, I want to make sure and remind you that you can find us on YouTube, Apple platform, and of course, listen to us on Spotify. Each of those platforms, if you can please hit like, share, and subscribe, helps us boost our ratings. Like, share, and subscribe. Again, YouTube. You can watch on YouTube or listen on Apple or Spotify. And so thank you again for being here. We get questions sometimes, and I just want to remind you, you can send your questions into us at info@nytowns.org, info@nytowns.org. We'll answer the questions back. So if you have anything you're interested in talking about or asking about, please make sure you get that into us, and we'll make sure we respond in a future podcast. Today, we have a really good friend of the association, someone I've had the opportunity and privilege to work with a little bit when I was still at Glenville. He is the comptroller of the town of Glenville, and we have Josh Kirby with us today. Hello, Josh.
Hi, Chris. Thanks
How
for
are
having me. I'm doing well today. Thank you.
Good, good. Before we get into it, we're going to talk about tax cap issues and things related to town budgets. And before we do that, though, Josh, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe say a few words about yourself, give us a little background on you.
Yeah, sure. So again, thanks for having me. As you said, I'm the town comptroller of the town of Glenville. I was lucky enough to get hired by a former supervisor. So I've been there that was March of 2024. I've been there for coming up on 2 years. Prior to that, I served at the state comptroller's office for 4 years. And prior to that, I was with a public accounting firm, Marvin and Company. So a lot of audit experience. I have 8, 10 years of audit experience, and now a couple of years of comptroller experience in local government. So it's been nice.
And the town of Glenville is a little bit more nuanced or a little bit more complex than some towns because it has a village inside of it. So you got the A fund and the B fund, and you have to make sure you're allocating things properly between all those funds.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
never easy.
No, but I've enjoyed learning the nuances of town government and fund accounting, which I knew quite a bit before, but I've really got to know it in the last couple of years, which has been it's been great. Honestly, I enjoy it. So I can say that.
So we're talking about the tax cap today in particular, and town of Glenville has been one of the towns that have never broke the tax cap. I think the only municipality in Schenectady County that can say that to this day. So congratulations, doing good work.
Yeah.
But every year must be a challenge, obviously, right? So what's the biggest challenge? And every year I think the challenge probably gets a little bit harder. So what's the biggest challenge your town faces in trying to stay under the tax cap?
I would say quite simply trying to provide the level of services that the taxpayers have come to expect while keeping under that tax cap has been just a challenge in and of itself. Last year, again, my first year as comptroller, 2024, developing the 2025 budget. I'm seeing these mandatory expenses coming our way. That three mandatory expenses: health insurance, we're going to get into in a little bit, New York State retirement expense, and contractual wage increases. Those three things alone were more than double our allowable levy limit in 2020 for 2025. So I'm looking at that 6 months into the job, and I'm like, how is this going to work? So we had to kind of scramble toward the end of 24, and we'll get into this in a little bit and talk more about it, but how we made that work. But it was definitely a challenge. So, and I'll say this too, that we have just a great team of employees at Glenville, and everybody's on the same page with regard to staying under the cap and wanting to stay fiscally responsible. So I think that's necessary for any kind of goals, to have everybody on the same page, which we're lucky to have.
And we're going to talk about the mandates too in a little while. But you identified right off the bat three very expensive mandated expenses, and they all relate to personnel. And towns are very personnel heavy. You need people to deliver these services, and so the sustainability of a tax cap at, say, a arbitrary 2% or inflation, whichever is less, and you're looking at wages going up, what, and sometimes 3, 4, 5%.
Yeah,
is typical. Health insurance is probably double-digit increases.
easily.
Yeah,
20% in some cases.
20%.
Yeah.
Yeah, on top of probably one of the biggest items in the budget.
Yes.
And then retirement, which is getting a little bit also expensive. Tier 6 was supposed to curb some of that, and it may have, but it's still continuing to go up at a pretty high price. And there's no way around that. But I think one of the issues that the state puts us in a difficult position is with the Taylor law, right? So you go to the bargaining table, and the union, if they do nothing, stays where they are. So what's the incentive for the union to negotiate anything away if they don't have to negotiate anything away? That's one of the issues. I think the state is making it more difficult for towns to try to control these costs.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say that, kind of stole my thunder, that you've sat in a number of contract negotiations, and I don't think you probably have ever seen anyone settle for a 0 or 1%
Never,
increase.
never.
And the tax cap, as you said, is 2%, or the, or inflation, whichever's greater, and or whichever's less. And yeah, the math ain't mathing on that, as they say. So
You also had a great strategy, you and the supervisor there, to deal with health insurance increases, or at least try to slow them down with what you were able to get out of your negotiations with the PBA. But generally speaking, I think the state makes it very difficult, very expensive state for health insurance. The fact that you have to, if you're under 100 employees, you have to stay in community rating does not help. But talk a little bit about one of the solutions you employed, and also how well do you think that will help with trying to keep that cost down?
well, so as you know, at the town, we've had the three platinum plans through CDPHP, MVP, and Highmark for as long as I know. I probably your entire tenure there. And when you're looking at a health plan that already costs a family $35,000 a year, going up to $40,000 a year, and the employees contributing 15 or 20%, that's a huge burden on the town. So we looked at a high deductible plan through MVP, fully funded, fully funding that deductible for the employees. So it's a huge savings to the employee, but also a savings to the town. The savings is more dependent on utilization, so it's kind of a little bit of a gamble, but it's a guaranteed savings either way, and it's a win-win because you're not changing any coverage for the employees. They're still getting the same level of health coverage, which is obviously we need that, we need to maintain that, and they're saving money. It's more real dollars back in the employees' pockets as well, which was good, and just another thing to kind of lessen the burden on those mandates that we're talking about.
But even with employing that strategy, you're still seeing some increases.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, of
And
course.
that's still an issue in the state. No question about it. Are you using HSA dollars or HRA? Like, do the dollars go to the employees and stay with the employees, or do you capture those back in an HRA?
So we're trying to offer both. Not all of our unions have bought into this yet, so we haven't been able to offer it widely to all town employees yet. But we do offer the HRA fully funded or 50% funded HSA, which again is a huge benefit to the employees. With an HSA, as you said, you keep that's money that we're going to put in your pocket, and you're going to keep it with you forever.
So HSA, they get half of their deductible,
Yeah,
funded, HRA full.
correct.
Oh, that's great. We talked a little bit about the mandates and the mandated expenses. What do you feel is probably, I always say, what's your favorite mandate? What's the biggest mandate you guys are facing?
If I had to pick a favorite mandate, well, it's health insurance for sure. I've learned a lot about health insurance, I will say, in the last couple of years. Managing it from the employer's perspective, and it's such an important thing. Obviously, our employees need good health coverage, and we're lucky enough to have to be able to offer that. We can't fully afford to pay for health insurance 100%, so there is some employee contribution, but that is I would say probably, yeah, my favorite mandate.
There's a lot of little mandates too that people may not be aware of. And we just had I just testified at the Assembly's Committee on Procurement Reform. And one of the big ones that we've been really focused on is public notices, what you have to pay, what a town has to pay to put all those notices in the paper, in print. And we feel as though, I remember when I was there, it was a significant number.
Yeah,
It's very, there's
thousands. Yeah,
thousands. Oh, thousands. I think
many
it
thousands.
was like multiple,
Hmm.
like towards six figures in some years when we were doing a lot of different projects and everything. And if you have a procurement contract over 20,000 or 35,000, depending, you'd have to do it for those. But it slows down the whole process because you have to get into the paper, they have to print it, then the clock starts on the 30-day or whatever. So very inefficient, very expensive. And we're really pushing to try to get public notices on the town website. Now that everyone has a town website, everyone goes to their website for information. You probably have more traffic on your website than the local paper has readers. And we look at it and say they can go to the town and get the information free on the website. You're making them buy a newspaper to read it in print. That's one mandate that we're fighting against. But there's a ton of those little mandates out there that actually add up. And so I think something like that would probably help your town.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be all for that. I know we kind of touched on that at another time, kind of off the record, and I would love to see something like that. It's kind of moving toward the 21st century too, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who reads the paper anymore? I was a paper delivery boy, but
So was I
yeah.
in 1982, I think it was. Um, so to answer your question, I read two newspapers a day, so I still read the paper, and I love the paper. Actually, I'm going to give a plug out to the local newspaper. I think everyone should read their local newspaper because they do a really good job at covering local government, and I think there's not enough good um, information out there for people covering local government. So I do think they should read the paper, but I don't think we have to put our public notices in the paper anymore. You look at the job market, nobody has a help wanted ad. Remember, you're too young probably. Remember, I used to go through the help wanted ads and you'd go through 3 or 4 pages with your highlighter trying to find a job that was listed. That's all electronic now. Why is that? Because private sector automatically moved to what was more efficient and what was cheaper. But the state is artificially holding the town back from doing that. Why should the taxpayers have to bear that burden when we could easily just move into the 21st century? Any other mandates that you want to bring up?
I mean, we talked about the contractual wages already. You don't see anything below 2% really these days, year to year. So, and I have no problem with that. I mean, it costs money to have good employees. So I realize that. I understand that. I remember I was listening to the previous podcast just before this, and you had the supervisor from the town of Bethlehem talking about we're at the point where we have to decide between infrastructure and employees, and that's shocking. That shouldn't really be the case. But anyway, yeah,
I mean, we talked about how the private sector has really driven wage inflation up, right? So after COVID,
wageflation.
wage inflation.
Yeah.
And we talked about that in our budget back when I was there. And it was a big concern of mine. It still is because we can't keep we can't keep pace with the private sector. You just can't. And so that's becoming a major problem. Workforce development is a whole nother
Yeah.
podcast that we're gonna do. You brought up a important word, infrastructure. And so, do you feel that the cap in a way forces the town to either defer investments in infrastructure or capital improvements or anything like that? Do you think that cap acts as a deterrent for investing in important infrastructure?
Yeah, I think it does. I'll say that I get to brag on the town of Glenville a little bit because I walked into a really solid fiscal foundation when I came in, and so that wasn't an issue initially. Although we did see some crazy increases from 24 to 25. We haven't had to defer infrastructure at all since I've been there. I've only been there a short time. That hasn't really come up as a concern, but I certainly can see how it would be. I know there's been years where we have not been able to invest additional funds into paving roads. We've had to just rely on our CHIPS funding, which is it's a good amount of money. It's almost $500,000. But when you're talking about only being able to pave 2 or 3 miles of road with that money, that's not a huge dent when you have a 90-mile road town.
And when you think about where you work, because that money has stayed fairly flat, just recently got a little bump, but it's been fairly flat for years and years and years. And you think about where the cost of aggregate is and where the cost of the materials are compared to what you're able to do, say, in 2010 to what you do today, there's a big difference there in paving. Um, and I happen to know in Glenville and a lot of towns, there's a lot of deferred maintenance costs right now in the water plant. There needs to be massive upgrades. I think your last upgrade in Glenville was in the 80s.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was in the 80s.
probably. Yeah.
I've been in the plant, and I happen to know it reminds me of a 60s James Bond movie with the levers and it looks very
It's impressive, though, I will say.
antiquated. It's very impressive, but they're obviously doing a lot of important work of delivering water to how many customers? I don't even
Yeah,
know.
6,000.
In town, and then you have out of town
Oh, sure,
customers,
out of town customers.
which significant responsibility. But all those upgrades, 30 million, 40 million. The distribution system needs to be upgraded. We're now dealing with PFOAs, as you know. We're dealing with lead pipe abatement. The town doesn't have that so much, but some towns do. So, we've always kind of pushed this program called SWAP, the Sewer Water Action Program. And we think that that will help towns get onto a proactive maintenance plan. And although it would be a little bit of money, kind of like chips, not enough, clearly not enough, but a little bit of money to at least invest in infrastructure proactively. We hear from the highway superintendents that if they change out a water main break or water main proactively, it's like $10,000. If you do it during an emergency break, under the conditions of, say, at night or whatever, it goes to 30, 40, 50,000, depending on what time and how long it takes. And so this little bit of money can actually save towns money. And so we're really pushing SWAP. Can you talk a little bit about what a program like that would mean to your town?
I think that would be huge. I mean, we had a huge main break this year on our main corridor, Freeman's Bridge Road. That was $50,000. It was over 50,000. So that would be huge. I would actually want to use that money that would be earmarked for sewer and water to purchase equipment that we'd be able to, repair our own water main breaks, which we actually plan on purchasing a backhoe in 2026 to do just that, so we can avoid some of those costly repairs.
See, some of that would be very helpful. So, everyone talks about the grants are available, and grants are great, but grants give a lot of money to few municipalities. This would give a little bit of money to everybody. And so you can do that. Purchase equipment, purchase materials. Some towns have told us just buying the chlorine.
Yep.
It would be a huge difference.
That's a huge expense. Yeah.
You can use it maybe to feed into the grant system, because we know grants are expensive to source, to write, to administer. I mean, you guys now, I think you've gone to inside grant writer, but using the consultants is expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, the consultants are. It's one of my deputy comptroller's least favorite bills to pay is to grant administration and those types of services.
So you talked earlier about you talked about you stayed under the tax cap, but your three major expenses were double what were allowable under the tax cap. So what strategies do you employ to stay under the? Is there a secret? Is there a trade secret you don't want to talk about, or is there a way that you stay under the cap?
No, I think I kind of alluded to it before. We already have a culture of maintaining that under the tax cap status. We've done it every year since it's been implemented, as you said, and I think it really takes a team environment to do that, to be committed to that. I've been accused of being of nickel and diming, but as my deputy comptroller says, nickel and dimes add up to dollars. So
I've been accused of that.
it's it happens from time to time. But anyways, no, I don't think there's like some kind of a grand strategy that we look at. It's really just coming together, being a cohesive team, and pursuing that goal of being financially responsible. And I will say that we try to contain costs as much as we can. We brought services back in house like tax prep and tax billing. That alone is going to save tens of thousands over the course of a few years. Purchased a machine to be able to do that. The health insurance restructuring that health plan was huge. As I said, we're going to purchase a backhoe in 2026 to help us repair our own water breaks, so we don't have to subcontract those out to the tune of $50,000+. So things like that. Also, you guys already paved the way of cutting debt.
That's huge.
So we don't have to rely on debt as much, and we try not to purchase things that we don't need. So very simply.
So when I came in 15 years ago, the prevailing culture was oh, a bond is expiring. Let's hurry up and get something to replace it. And we were like, no, that's not how it works. You don't just go replace debt because you need to replace debt. No need, no doubt you needed certain things, but we did get into that where we, as a cutting debt, you had more available cash, then you could buy more with cash. It was a little bit of a transition period to get there, but I think that helped a lot, getting that debt. And I know there's a lot of debt coming off. That might have to be replaced because of that water plant. That was, I think, the last time it was really addressed.
Yeah, we can't kick that can down the road anymore.
No, it's crazy.
As they say.
So when you consider the tax cap and mandates and increased cost for services, all the things we talked about, one of the things that I think troubles towns is that towns is one of the local governments that really do not have any other access to funding significantly other than the levy. So you look at the counties, look at the cities, they have access to sales tax by right, towns do not. Grocery receipts tax, towns do not. Some gasoline tax, uh, hotel tax, all these other revenue streams, tremendous amount of state and federal aid going into the counties. Towns don't get that. So really you have to rely on the levy more than anything. And you could talk a little bit about your other revenue lines, but they're very small compared to the levy. And so do you think, when you think about the tax cap and the levy and all the costs and what they're doing, is that a formula that's sustainable? Is the levy really the way that we can finance local government anymore?
No, I don't think it is. The levy is almost 50% of our budget. Our $10 million levy and a $23 million budget. We got to make up the gap somewhere. And sales tax, as you alluded to, it's not required to be shared with municipalities from the county, but it is in many cases. And I'd love to see more of that. I definitely would call on our county legislators to sharpen their pencils on that and help us out, because we're struggling. I mean, of the 7 surrounding counties, we have the lowest percentage-wise sharing in sales tax. So I'd love to see that increase a little bit.
That was a major campaign of mine back in the middle of my 15-year term, where we called it our fair share, and we wanted to make sure the county was sharing more, because you got a certain amount and that was it. You had no growth share. Even we were successful in getting some factor of growth in that, but not to the level that we need, certainly. But at least it was the door opening to that. And now I think as we negotiate this this contract, it gives us a better opportunity to talk about that and gives us a base for which to work off of. But the problem is towns don't have a right to that. So cities do, and counties do, and they can negotiate with each other, and they have to, because the city can walk away from a county agreement and say, we're doing our own. I think that happens in Saratoga Springs. But towns aren't even at the table during the negotiations. And so it's a very frustrating thing to say, oh, well, look at pilots. Let's talk about pilots for a minute.
Oh boy.
So, we're going down a rabbit hole now. I mean, pilots are handed out by most county IDAs. We don't have to speak specifically about Schenectady County, because I happen to know that Metroplex is a great partner for the towns, and Ray Gillen does a phenomenal job in Schenectady County. There's no question about that. But in a lot of areas, county IDA will give away a pilot, which will reduce the levy opportunity for the town without any of the town's input or say. And then that pilot actually hurts your tax cap calculation, because whatever the pilot is, they lower your tax cap calculation by. I mean, don't you think that the state should look at a way of giving towns either an ability to stay whole in that situation somehow, a say in the approving of the pilot, and or other revenue lines?
Yeah.
That was a softball question.
That was an easy one. Yeah.
It was a long question, but
yeah, we'd love some more opportunities for funding, whatever that looks like. I know you got some ideas, so I want to let you talk about that.
Oh, you want me to talk
go
about it?
right ahead.
The guest is supposed to talk here.
Well,
you're the
expert.
Talk too much. But we do want to make sure that towns have more of a say in that, because it is your levy. Now, you talked about 50% of your budget is levy. What are some of the other things that come in to make up the rest of your budget revenue line?
Yeah, well, sales tax, mortgage tax, which we've seen, be relatively flat the last few years. We're hoping that it trends back up. People buying homes.
But let's break this down from
Yeah.
it. Sales tax, you get what, 2 million?
Almost three
3
with
million.
Metroplex and county sales.
So you do get a percentage of the Metroplex tax, which is an additional tax.
Yes.
Outside the sales tax.
Yep.
Okay. And then mortgage tax, how's that been trending over the past couple?
Trending down. It was about $1 million 3 years ago, and now it's 500. So
Ooh,
yeah, it's been cut in half.
wow.
Basically. Yeah.
So that's your third largest line?
Yeah.
Third largest line cut in half.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Let's just third largest line cut in half.
Mm-hmm.
Three biggest costs, double the
Double.
tax cap.
Yeah.
Allowable.
The same math.
Think about it. How does that work? How's that sustainable?
It's tough. It's gonna be interesting going forward.
And then you got your franchise, cable franchise. What's going on in that line?
Yeah, that's been relatively flat as well, even trending down, I would say.
People are cutting the
So-
cord more.
They are.
That's the other thing we identified is people move from cable, which used to pay a franchise fee into the local government,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going on to streaming services. That revenue is not being replaced.
Right.
So that's another line going down. So, the general trend has been all revenue has been stagnant or dropping, yet all costs are going up.
Mm-hmm.
Even the state aid, AIM, and CHIPS have been pretty stagnant.
Yep.
All costs going up. And I've said this all my time as supervisor, there's only one place to go.
Yep.
It's a taxpayer.
Yep.
So when is a taxpayer going to stand up and say enough is enough?
Yeah, that's the question.
But it's not the local government. I feel like the tax cap has been set up to make it look like the local government is out of control in spending, right? And now I know Glenville happens to be one of the most cost-effective governments because I travel the state, and compared to similar sized towns, budget's much smaller, staff is much smaller. But it's not the local government that's out of control spending, right? It's all these other things we talked about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. As I said, we've been accused of nickel and diming, and so it's definitely not out of control spending. That is not our issue.
Yeah.
We do need more help.
Yeah.
100%.
What else, Josh? It's been a very engaging conversation. I know that a lot of folks don't think that local government finance is interesting, but it actually is, and it's actually one of the things that impacts people the most, more than they sometimes realize. And every time I get my tax bill, I feel it. Not town tax, I will say, but my time in my house in 20 years, my total property tax bill
Mm-hmm.
has more than doubled.
Yeah.
In 20 years, and that's just not sustainable.
No.
But I will say that when you look at your annual tax bill,
Mm-hmm.
at least for the town of Glenville, and yet that dollar you pay, let's say you pay whatever it is, let's pick a number. You pay $5,000 a year in taxes. Each dollar you pay annually,
Mm-hmm.
how does that break up between the county, the school, the town?
The town is the tiny little part of it. I think
Yeah.
it's less than 1%.
Yeah.
The county is a huge portion, and school is a huge portion.
I think
obviously the biggest portion.
what I remembered was 60% of your tax dollar, 60 cents of every dollar you pay goes to the school.
Yeah.
30 goes to the county.
Yep.
And 10 goes to the town.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's probably the same portion.
I was thinking the percentage of the funds, how you actually
Oh, yes.
you
yeah,
broke it up
yeah.
between the town general,
The dollar.
highway, and
Yeah.
yeah.
So the taxpayer who has an annual tax bill of all three, the county, state, or the county, school, and town, most of it's going to school and county.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that presentation with me. By the way,
Yeah.
we've used it a couple times. It's a good one.
It was very effective.
Yeah.
When people saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else you want to bring up here today?
No. You know what? This has been a great conversation. I appreciate you having me in. And when you first talked about, I wanted to bring you in and talk about the tax cap. I thought, well, it seems a little boring, but it's really not. It's a huge deal, and I know you've got some ideas here at NIAT, and I'm excited to see what can come of that.
Yeah, we've been working hard with our deputy director and legislative director, Sarah Brancatella. We'll be bringing out a legislative agenda shortly for folks. We'll be having actually Sarah on to talk about the legislative agenda shortly and some of the ideas we have to address these issues. But In the meantime, again, I'll ask as you listen or watch our podcast, Talk of the Towns, where we talk about all things town related, please make sure you hit like, share, and subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll get the episodes delivered right to you every time they drop. And if you hit like and share, it helps our numbers and helps our rankings in the podcast world, which is very competitive, and we have a very niche podcast here. So anything you can do would be helpful. Again, YouTube, Apple platform, or Spotify are the places you can find us. We thank you for listening. Josh, we thank you for being here and giving us a great, I think, engaging conversation on what otherwise might seem boring. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.